What's up guys, welcome back to the channel. In this video, I'm going to take you through the process of me building this dual swing out bumper kit for the 5th gen 4Runner. I'm going to show you how you could possibly tackle this project and save yourself a lot of money. So I've wanted a dual swing out bumper kit like this one for a long time. The problem is that they're really expensive. They're anywhere from $3,000 to $5,000, and then you have to pay a lot of money in shipping because they're shipping out a full bumper. There's crazy long lead times, and then usually most of them don't even come painted. Eventually I came across the DIY option, which was good for me because I couldn't afford the other options. There was a couple different DIY options. There was one that I was looking at the start, but I discovered I didn't really like it because they wanted me to chop out a section of my frame to weld their bumper on. Eventually I settled on Coastal Off-Road. The nice thing about Coastal Off-Road is it actually bolts onto your frame and just kind of beefs up your frame even more. So I went with the low pro option. Coastal Off-Road also has a option that comes up fully to the bottom of your lights here, and then also has metal loops you can add on. So there are different options there. They are about at the same price point, and that is $1,500 US. So a really nice kit, very affordable. But you will have to put a lot of work into building this bumper. It's not something you're going to tackle in just a weekend. Make sure you give yourself days and days. The reason why these bumpers are so expensive when you buy them fully built is because there's a lot of labor involved. I'd say it's probably about 30% materials and there's 70% is actual labor. There's a lot of welding. It's a bit of work. I'm not a professional welder, but I tackled this project and I'm really happy with how it turned out. What I did though is I had a professional come in and just do some welding for me. So this tire holder here, I had a professional come in. I didn't want this coming off on the highway. So I had them weld that spot. I had them do the recovery points here and some structural stuff in the back. Basically what I did is I just tack welded and fitted everything in place myself with my welder. I drew arrows to the spots I wanted him to weld. And then he added really good penetrating welds in. It was only 2 hours labor, so it was really affordable, and it gives me peace of mind because I know that my recovery points are good, my structural stuff's good, and my tire here is welded on nicely. So I'm really happy with how this kit went. In this video, I'm going to take you through the whole process. I'm going to try to cover everything in about 10 minutes. So sit back, relax, enjoy, and hopefully this will give you some confidence to tackle this project yourself and hopefully save you some money. Let's jump into the video. Just wanted to quickly mention we are now on Instagram at t4r.garage. Follow the page to keep up to date on new videos that are coming out and also to win free t-shirts that I had made recently. I'll be drawing random people January 1st, February 1st, and March 1st for these t-shirts. All right, so this is how your Coastal Off-Road dual swing out bumper kit will arrive. Everything is neatly packaged into 40-pound or less packages, so it's easy to get it in and out of your shop or garage. So to start out, what we're going to do is take the largest piece, piece number 1, and we're going to slide parts number 2 into part number 1. This is the start of our recovery points. Don't worry, I know they look a little thin. We will be adding more metal to these later, but just slide 2 into 1, use your magnetic levels, get everything nice and square, and then you will tack weld parts number 2 onto part number 1. Once they're tack welded in place, finish up by welding them on fully to part number 1. All right, now moving along, we will be grinding down the bottom of part number 1. This is where parts number 3 and 4 will join up. So we need to create beveled edges on 1. Then we also need to create beveled edges on 3 and 4. That's what I'm doing here. I'm marking parts 3, and then I'm going to go over and mark part 4. And then I'm going to grind out those spots on parts 3 and 4. This way we can get a nice penetrating weld between 1, 3, and 4. All right, so what I've done is I've labeled all of my pieces there with a marker following the instructions. You're basically going to assemble everything in that order. So from the order of 1 until 13. So we're now ready to start putting the bumper together. All right, so you want to remove your plastic bumper cover from your 5th gen 4Runner. This is the same for all 5th gen 4Runners. It's essentially a bunch of 10mm bolts in the bottom, in the hatch, and in the wheel wells. Once you're done, basically just pop it off from the sides. All right, so coming to the back here, we've taken off the plastic bumper now. I'm just unbolting stuff from underneath. So there was this kind of tow hook here. We have our hitch receiver, 6 bolts there, took this off. And then coming under here, we have our plugins for if we're towing. So we need to unbolt this. I'll probably have to relocate this. And then we're gonna have to probably hammer down these bars just a little bit so the bumper can slide over top of them. They might just be a bit too high. And then what we're gonna do is come under, and there's a few things we need to prep under here. All right, so here's our frame rail here. This is our body mount. We're gonna have to chop this bolt. It just comes down a bit too low, so we'll just cut it about here. And then we'll chop this off on the side here. This is behind the driver's side back tire. And then we're gonna run a tap up into these holes. These are M8125 bolt holes, but they haven't been used, and so they get a lot of rust and gunk up there, so we just need to clean them out somehow. There's a plastic or a rubber piece that goes on here. I just popped it off. And we'll also trim this body mount bolt here as well. And then we'll also probably have to come in under our frame rail here and just grind down these welds. They just come down a little too low, these bubbly kind of welds. We'll just make sure those are nice and flat. All right, so in order for this bumper to fit perfectly, we need to trim out any pieces that hang down too low so the bumper will fit nicely over the frame and give us that additional clearance. So here I am banging out the top of the spare tire holder. All right, once we get that bumper on, make sure our frame is level, then make sure the bumper is level on the frame. We're now ready to start putting parts 3 and 4 onto the bumper. So bolt that onto the bottom of the frame and just tack weld it in place on the passenger side, and then repeat the process on the driver's side. Once you get 3 and 4 in place, you can now start putting number 5 in place, as you can see here. Then we'll put part 6 below 5, tack weld that into place. Then we can move on to part 7, that's behind part 5 and 6 here. You can't really see it. It's more of a structural piece. Once 7's in place, it's now time to move on to part 8. Part number 8 is important because it follows the body lines of our vehicle. So really measure this, make sure you have it in a good position. If it's not, it might look kind of off. Things won't follow the body lines and won't look square. Tack weld part number 9 into place, and then you can start moving on to part 10. 10 was a little tricky to hold in place and tack weld. I'd recommend having somebody assist you with this part. All right, so here I am putting parts 11 on. This part is in the wheel well, so just tack weld that into place. Once that is on, you are now ready to move on to the final piece, number 12. Just make sure that fits nicely, and then tack weld that piece into place. Now you'll want to move over and repeat this process on the other side of the vehicle. I was impressed with the kit, everything fit together perfectly, and the way that it goes together creates nicely exposed joints for you to add weld later. All right, so we are now going to start putting our hinges together. The reason why we're doing this is that we can start building out our lower swing out arms. Our lower swing out arms need to have threaded holes that our hinge bolts into. So in order to create those threaded holes, we need to assemble the hinge, put this plate on it, put these nuts on it, and then tack weld the nuts onto that plate. So put the hinge together, make sure everything is nice and tight. This is a good way to test fit. Get that plate on, slide those nuts on there, do this on both sides, and then we're going to put it into our vise. Once it's in our vise, we can tack weld those nuts onto the back of this plate. And this is the start of building out our swing out arms. This will make more sense in a moment. So disassemble your hinge now, and now we will have that plate with our threaded holes on for our swing out arm. So put that on our large lower swing out arm. This is going to be our tire carrier, and then tack weld that into place. Once that's tack welded in, put some nice beads all the way around the outside, and then we're going to start welding in this triangular support now on the top. Make sure you have nice penetrating welds for this. This is a structural piece. And then we'll start doing the opposite side. So this is going to be for our jerry can holder. So it's the same process. All right, so the bases of your swing outs are now complete. So what you can do is put your hinges back on and then put them on the top of the bumper using some extra metal from your kit just as a spacer. So you want to put it on each side. This will keep it up off the bumper, make sure the spacing is correct. Then clamp your hinge onto your bumper, and you're now ready to start tack welding it on. All right, so everything should be tack welded in place. You can now remove the bumper from the vehicle and start adding your full welds into all those joints and seams. All right, so we're now ready to start building our spare tire carrier. So take this circular piece of steel, place it on a spare tire, run the bolts through, and then just screw it on with some lug nuts on the opposite side. This will secure the bolts in place. Now you can start tack welding those bolts onto that steel round plate. I found these magnetic levels to be really good. So this is for our spare tire carrier here. This is the arm. What I'm doing is marking all of the joints where I'm going to do the welds. I'm going to grind down, clean those areas, and also add beveled edges into the kind of areas that need it. All right, so here I am finding center on the spare tire holder. Once I found center, I basically created an X using a square, and then I placed the tire arm on there, and then I tack welded this into place. I only tack welded this because I did get a professional to add stronger welds, as this does hold a 100-pound tire on the back of my vehicle. All right, so everything is pre-cut, so everything goes together very nicely. These magnetic levels make the job quite easy to do.
Just basically tack weld everything and then go in and add more serious, stronger, good penetrating welds after. This is for the jerry can holder. That's what I'm working on right here. Inspect your welds, make sure they have good penetration and that they're even on both sides. At this point, I am building the actual jerry can holder itself. This was very easy to do. It just requires a bit of measuring, using those magnetic levels again, and yeah, everything will just snap together. All right, so here I am putting the catch on the top of the bumper. This is what's going to catch our swing arms when they come in. So put that plastic part on and then make sure there's a gap below the swing arms and that plastic plate. You want about 1/8 of an inch, maybe a little bit more, then tack weld it into place when you're happy with where it is. At this point, the bumper is really starting to come along. It looks great. With that catch plate in the bottom there, you can now get an idea of where your latches are going to go, so you can tack weld those into place. And then we'll come along and put our little hooks in that our latches are going to latch onto. And now we can start working on the safety pin.
All right, so I've got this welded in place now. I've made sure that this plate's on here. Everything's tightened up. The latch is tight, so nothing's moving. Now what we're going to do is unscrew this from here. We'll slide this in here and we'll just make sure that we have a bit of a gap on the bottom. Okay. You could use a permanent marker, mark center down there, because we're going to drill I think it's a 3/8 hole. I'll just do like a circle like this. Not the best weld, but it'll do. Perfect. All right, guys, so we're getting to a really exciting part of the bumper build here. Everything's been welded, everything's been fitted, it's all coming together very nicely. What we need to do now is grind down all of the welds. Most of the welds that we're gonna grind are gonna be on the actual bumper itself. So in these corners and stuff here, we want all of those edges to be smooth. On the actual arms here, I'm not too concerned about grinding these welds. If there's some ugly welds, I might grind those. Just make sure you mask everything off. So these latches here, I've masked those off. Definitely mask off the hinges here. So I'll take this arm off, mask this off. I've already done it over there on the jerry can holder. When you're grinding though, make sure you have a respirator, like a dual cartridge respirator or an N95, because these metal filings will get in the air and you do not want to breathe them in. I'm gonna be using an angle grinder and flap discs. So I got a 40, 60, and 80 flap disc. I have just a regular grinding wheel, and I have a dual action sander with 80 grit sandpaper to prep everything for the primer and paint. But yeah, let's jump into the process. Let's get everything ground down and looking good.
All right, so I started off mostly grinding just with a steel grinding wheel. This way I could kind of just burn through the rough parts of the weld, get them somewhat smooth. Then I came in with the flap discs, the 60 and 80 grit flap disc, and finished up with that. When you're getting ready to sand, a good thing to do before you sand is to wipe everything down with a wax and grease remover just to remove any oils from this metal. It will come coated in oil, and this will prevent your sandpaper from getting caked up. Alright, so I used Upol's Raptor liner. I started off with their self-etching primer. This worked really well. Just make sure you use wax and grease remover before applying any of these products and apply them in a well-ventilated area with a dual cartridge respirator. Here I am applying the self-etching primer by Upol, and then I went in and I mixed the Raptor liner and used my pneumatic spray gun. You do not need to use a pneumatic spray gun. You can actually buy this stuff in spray paint cans that is still 2-part. I did apply 2 coats of the Raptor liner to the bumper. I'm really happy with how it turned out. I held it pretty far away, which gave me more of a textured look. The nice thing about Raptor liner is it is scratch resistant, chip resistant, and it doesn't fade. It's very durable stuff that's designed for truck beds. For the inside of the bumper, I used a rust paint. I just found it was easier to apply it using a brush because I'd get coverage in all the little nooks and crannies and areas that are just difficult to get into with a aerosol spray can. Alright, so now ready to mount the bumper onto the 5th Gen 4Runner. I did end up spraying these washers black to make them match better. But yeah, bolt on all the bolts, 6 in the front, 8 underneath, and then measure. Measure the gaps, mark it on your plastic bumper. I just used a permanent marker, then I used some, I think 3/4 inch tape to create a nice straight line. And then I used a Dremel to basically cut along the lines I'd created. Make sure you measure twice, or measure 3 or 4 times like I did, and cut once. Now you can pop it on your 5th Gen 4Runner. Use some tape to prevent your paint from getting scratched here. Yeah, just pop it in and then secure it with those 10mm bolts, and then remove the tape. Really happy with the fitment. Right, so we can now start mounting those swing arms onto the 5th Gen 4Runner's bumper. These bolted on very nicely, locked in place perfectly. Everything is square, everything is level, looks amazing. All right, so bolt on your jerry can holder. Then on the jerry can holder, there's 2 holes that I ran a tap into to bolt my license plate onto. So that was a M8125 tap. And then yeah, ran M8 bolts in, put the tire on, and here's the completed bumper.
All right, guys, so that concludes the build of the dual swing up bumper kit for the 5th Gen 4Runner. I really hope you guys found this video useful. If you did, please like and subscribe. I hope to come up with a lot more videos, and I always appreciate your guys' support. Hope to see you guys in the next video. Bye now.